America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda for the special meeting.
So moved, David.
Moved by David,
Second.
second by Melissa. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The only other item on the agenda, Superintendent Gross, do you want to talk about the resolution to expel?
You bet. This isn't something that we do a lot of, and that's great, but at the same time, important that as a school district and a high school that we maintain safety to the degree that we can, knowing that there are 1,100 people in a building, in this case, every day, and sometimes bad choices are made. We have a policy related to student discipline, student behavior, and the facts of the incident, I think you're aware to the degree that you need to be to make the decision. Principal Ofsted worked closely with our attorney on this. From a process standpoint, the state provides a great deal of due process for students to make sure their rights are protected. And so he's worked closely with the attorney on that, also with the families of those that were involved. And we do have an obligation to continue to provide education for the student. That's part of the law as well. And so we stand prepared to do that. And this resolution comes with my recommendation.
At this point, I'm looking for a motion to approve the resolution to expel student GRX1.
So moved.
24. Moved by Pat.
Second.
Second by Mindy. Julie, I think we need a roll call vote.
Yes.
Is there any discussion prior to the vote? Hearing none.
We'll start with you, Pat Maduri,
Yes.
Melissa Barr. Yes. David Marty,
Yes.
Mindy Nuring,
Yes.
and Mark Schroeder.
Yes.
I don't believe Ben is on yet. So.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other business to come before the special meeting? Hearing none, the special meeting's adjourned. We're going to move right into the workshop. We'll call the workshop to order. First item on the agenda is budget reduction ideas from the unit leadership. Carol, do you want to start out?
Yeah. Good evening. So in front of you, you should have a document that says unit ideas from the unit leaders. And several months ago, I sat with Mr. Maduri and Mr. Schroeder, and we talked about the upcoming budget cuts after the referendum failed, and talking about not wanting to have any more cuts from any of the units, really. We can't really afford that. And Mr. Maduri,
Spin the speaker or something, I think.
Mr. Maduri suggested, yeah, it's better. So Mr. Maduri, thank you, Pat, suggested that the unit leaders get together. So in front of you today, we have the majority of the unit leaders. So working on this collaborative idea kind of across the aisle, were Dan Adams for the principals unit, Polly Palpesker and Melanie DeBay from the directors unit, myself from the teachers unit, Sue Roy for the administrative assistants, Ella Cummings from Ojibwe Ed, Jeannie Ryan from custodial, Karen Elander, food service, Jessica Taylor, maintenance and grounds, and then Carrie Haley, Amy Newmeyer from ESPs. So we did have a wide range, and Julie needs to be on there. Julie's not on there, so Julie was also one of our members, so Julie Rasmussen. So in front of you, what we did is we met in December as a group and said, hey, what could we do to try to come to the board with some ideas? We know that you all have ideas, but we are working out there and we see some things maybe that could be done that you might not see. And so we sat and talked in December, and our task was to go back to our units in January and to get ideas from our units and then come back as a group. And so we met a total of 3 times, I think, between December and then January. We met a couple of times. And what we did is we went and got our ideas from the units, not necessarily without any controversy, and then came together. But what we decided was if we were not unanimous on agreeing on something, that it would not be on the list. So all of us but one might have said, hey, we want to do a 4-day week, and someone might have said, nope, I don't like that because that's going to impact our bus drivers and our hourly workers. It came off. And so we are completely 100% united as to what is on this document in front of you right now. So I'm just going to walk you through. I asked these lovely people if any of them were passionate about anything on here, and short of Karen, who's very passionate about insurance, everyone else was like, nope, Carol, you're fine. You can go ahead and go through here. So, and I won't insult your intelligence, but I will just kind of walk you through some of these. Some of them were really staggering and surprising. The first one on the list is something that I've spoken to some of you about, is following Rockridge's model, having a grant writer / fundraiser / somebody out there pounding the streets to get money. And again, the cost savings or earnings, who knows, possibly millions, potentially. Grade level buildings is something you all have talked about already. We've talked about not opening buildings earlier than 8 a.m. Energy, electricity, et cetera, and I'm sure someone on the board has looked into this. Polly's a very good researcher, and so Polly contacted the electric company for what the cost of one fridge, one teeny tiny little Diet Coke fridge for under my desk. It's $35 for mine, and we estimated that there's a minimum of $200. There's probably more in the district. That's $7,000 savings if we got rid of those. And I know I'm gonna have to give up my Diet Coke, but that's just refrigerators. That's not coffee pots. That's not toaster ovens. That's, yeah. So discontinuing retirement bells, plaques, engraving, etc. That's not a giant savings, but again, in a time when we're needing to cut corners, it's possibly something that could be looked at. Group, is there anything more there anyone wants to say? We're good. In the next section, buildings, grounds, etc., following through with the conversion of Big Fork to propane from fuel oil, or potentially pre-buy fuel oil at a reduced cost. Possibly a rebate of $50,000 when upgraded. Research switching paper towels. And then in technology, and Chris is in here if you have any questions when I'm finished. Decreasing one-to-one devices in elementaries, going cart-based, and some of these were already being discussed ahead of time. Reducing the number of devices that staff have, 1 device per staff member. I'm not sure if all of you are aware, but many staff members have multiple devices, not only a laptop, but also an iPad and maybe potentially a desktop computer. Again, nice to have versus need to have. We're in the ramen noodle and duct tape situation right now. Less technology overall. Reducing online subscriptions with an estimate out of Brian's department of $60,000. And you can see in the comment area, Chris has a comment in there too about the time. Payroll, finance, benefits. Karen, if you want to jump in, you're welcome to do this. But lots of discussion on potentially grandfathering healthcare coverage, and this does get into contract, but grandfathering and not doing any of the covering singles from now on for new hires, et cetera, and married employees, what that would say. Increasing fees for groups using facilities, that would be revenue. Increasing the parking pass cost at the high school. Reducing staff development, travel, and reimbursement expenses. And we did not get into the nitty gritty on this, but for example, maybe we only pay registration and meals, no mileage. Mileage is getting very, very costly. Must use a district vehicle, must share room, things like that. Look at some ways to save money. Staffing, this one was something I think we were looking at regarding unemployment. So potentially 9-month custodians through the summer, which may have impacted unemployment. I think it was that one. Purchasing, double check purchases of high volume, purchases like paper. One thing came up where a staff member was able to find paper cheaper than what we were paying for in the district, but we couldn't do it for whatever reason. Fully adopting paper cuts, reducing tech time, cost of printing and toners. And it is really a pretty slick situation. So Ryan and Chris, sorry I complained about it because it is pretty slick. Sports and activities, this one, there's a lot in this area. Redoing policy on charter bus reimbursements for sports teams, change the policy to increase cost to booster clubs, try to limit or eliminate charter bus trips if possible. And we did talk about that. Sometimes buses aren't available. More games on, and you can note all the way to the right that we have some commentary from Dale Christie too as the athletic director. So it's as to some comments on some of those things. More games on weekdays, change schedules. So less Saturday home games to save on custodial if it's not a chargeback. More Saturday for away games, so there are district drivers available. Have middle school sports go to club sports. And again, there's a comment from Mr. Christie, that's gonna be a philosophy also for the board. And if you have questions about that too, Dan could probably answer some of those. Try to limit away activities to 2 away games a day. Increase advertising money collected for activities, sponsorships in revenue. And you can see he says they're currently working on that. Increase gate fees for activities, offer adult season passes. Look at cuts to sports and activities where we have fewer than 10 participants, temporary. Stop allowing athletics to schedule games on paid holidays to save on overtime costs with custodial, et cetera. Transportation, we talked about this. I think I talked about this with some board members of looking into, could we take our transportation and make it charter-based? And you can see that Greg said it can't if there's a charter within 15 miles, and you all may already have known that. And under instruction, research telepresence for classes, selling services to other districts, and look at a minimum enrollment in IB SIDS classes, cancel classes below that threshold. I know that that's been an issue, a concern that's come up, at least from units. So to be able to do that, so. Questions, comments, concerns?
I would just say, wow, thanks. I mean, we've talked about some, but not all of them, and to know that they're 100% supported that's huge. And that's just huge, so thank you for work, because this is not easy work.
No.
Because you talk about yourself.
It wasn't.
So I get that.
Mhm.
I get that, so I just want to thank all of you for doing that. I mean, that means a lot.
Thank
It
you.
means a lot,
Yeah.
it holds a lot of weight.
What I think is important is that you had units coming together because we knew the decisions were going to be made anyway. And we had units coming together, which has been pretty powerful. Oh, Pat, go ahead.
I just want to echo Melissa's comments there, Carol, for the work you and your group put together here. You know, when we get into these times, people have a tendency to run to their corners. But I think it's a time when you need to come together. We all need to come together and work on this together collectively for a good end result. And I think there's some good ideas here. I would just ask that Matt and your team that's looking at the overall budget recommendations going forward, you look at these and see how it might fit into the work that's already been done and going forward. So again, thank you for the work to you and your group there, Carol. Much appreciated.
And we do recognize that you don't have to listen to us. You don't have to take these into consideration. We understand that. We know that ultimately the cuts fall on your shoulders.
I have a question. With technology, so it's more of a, we're not going to replace things. This might be a question for Chris, but when would we be replacing some of these at $120,000? Would that be the coming year that we'd have that savings, or in a couple of years?
It's not like a savings, it's a total cost for K through 6. We've already surpassed the replacement rate of that. We used to buy 3 grade levels every year to keep up with those replacement costs. And over the last 2.5 years.
So you're constantly doing that, like I said. I'm just curious how, like with this budget coming up, how that would roll into how it would affect that. Would it be a full 720,000? No. Okay.
It would only be the reduction would be the number, not buying the number of devices that we normally would buy.
And then it would still be a savings ongoing because we're not
Correct, yep.
replacing all those. Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have any numbers? I know a lot of districts have moved away from Apple because of the high expense that Apple has and moved to more like Chromebooks, things where people can type on, because I know a lot of high schoolers are trying to type papers on their iPads, and it's, I mean, unless you have a parent who's willing to buy you the keyboard, you're kind of stuck. So just curious, because I know there are districts who have moved away from Apple simply because of that. And when they go into the work world, most of them are using
I believe
Apple
Chris
products.
I think Chris has.
Yeah, do you just want to
I mean, really, the reason why we buy the MacBooks is durability for the cost effectiveness of it.
Got it.
We went to multiple Windows devices, whether it be Dell, Lenovo kind of stands out above the race, but it's
Still.
about 4-year replacement on those. These MacBooks, we stretch out a little bit longer. Some of those Windows machines, something goes bad on them within 2 years, usually about a year after the warranty's up or whatever.
That's good.
It's the reason why we buy the MacBooks. The iPads are a durability issue too. I mean, we get cases on them, they can carry them around. Talking to some of the other districts like Greenway, I just talked to him this afternoon and asked them about that because they did go out Chromebooks. Now they have the same issues, but it's just.
That's good to know. I didn't know.
It is something that's come up quite a bit. You know, it came up today in our meeting that we had with admin. You know, I think it could be something that we pilot in an individual spot, like Big Fork maybe, or kind of a place where we could study it well, to see, but, yeah.
Really, the Chromebooks really are getting to that price point too, where if we go through Apple,
Yeah.
we kind of get it, it's like a little trade-off. We pay like $150 more a device. But some of the things that are on an iPad now with AI are extraordinarily above what a Chromebook could ever produce for you. So there's that trade-off also, it's just technology-wise.
I agree.
Ryan, could you comment on the online subscriptions?
Sure. So currently in our, currently we spend roughly $60,000 on online subscriptions for our elementary buildings, including the middle school. Some of those are like iExcel, Dreambox, RAS Kids, RAS Plus. They're programs that definitely can accelerate the learning for kids that you're trying to push further, or can remediate the learning for those kids that need it. It's something that's above and beyond our curriculum that I think we need to kind of take back control of, and through our curricular review process, that's when we would determine these things and the needs. So I think we cut back up, and when we can build back, we will through our curricular review processes.
Ryan, is it fair to say, do you think that during COVID, we kind of amped up some of the software because there were extra funds available?
Quite a bit. Yep, we did.
I like the idea of the curriculum review process simply because of some of the businesses that worked, you know, everybody had to get their own stuff, and then pretty soon there was security issues with just different, Chris is trying to, you know, just security issues with different people having different passwords and different subscriptions that you don't know about. Not that anybody's doing anything bad, it just opens up the gate a little bit further.
Any other questions or comments?
So I'd like to give the opportunity to anybody else that was on the committee to, you know, if there's other comments or other ideas.
I would like to say that we were really reaching in some cases, and we had an extraordinarily long list. And then upon asking questions outside of our expertise, there were reasons why certain things shouldn't stay on the list because they weren't possible.
I also recognize that in some places you might have to spend money to make money, right? In the grant writing and even the transition in fuel. But there are some dollars out there that you can go after. I mean, even there's dollars for grant writers that we can go after them. But you would probably have to hire before you get the money, but it is a position that could pay for itself potentially.
Any other discussion? Thank you very much, Carol, for
Thank you for
bringing that
listening.
group together.
Thank
And a lot of good suggestions here, things that I think we can incorporate. Next item on the agenda is review of the 24-25 school calendar. Superintendent Gross.
This is a draft that's prepared for you today, and the first thing that I'll just mention, Carol mentioned 4-day week. That's something that's come up quite a bit. It's something I brought up in October, and it's been talked about the last couple of years as a cost-cutting measure. I found out last week that the Minnesota Department of Education is not considering new applications for districts wanting to do a 4-day week. And so at this point, based on the current status of MDE and their position on it, we would not be able to do a 4-day week in the fall, even if we wanted to. And then again, I'm not sure how that, if it just kind of stayed below the radar or wasn't like a big official announcement at some point. But anytime a school district wants to do an alternative calendar, and by alternative, I think that's sort of a 5-day week, certain number of instructional hours, et cetera, you have to submit a application for an alternative calendar to MDE. And there are certain selections you can make, like 45-15, if you wanted to do that. They do that. I think there's a couple districts doing that year-round kind of a thing. If you want to start early because you have construction that's going to start in May, you can do that, but you have to submit for an alternative calendar. And there was a place to select 4-day week on there, and right next to that it says MDE is no longer taking applications for new 4-day week, blah, 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 renewals only. So that was news to me. I did have a conversation with the MDE staffer that oversees that process, and she said that it actually goes back to when Mark Dayton was the governor. And he felt, or they felt at the time, that there was insufficient evidence around academic achievement for kids. And so they put a moratorium on it. That during COVID, they didn't want to even consider the idea of students going to school less because they felt like students needed to stay connected to schools. And she said that every governor and commissioner of education since then has supported continuing this moratorium. So at this point, we couldn't do that. Now, in a conversation I had with the head of one of the associations that we're a part of, the director mentioned that she was aware of a bill that might be introduced that would give the boards some more authority related to that. But the deadline for application is in April. And so with the legislative calendar, that doesn't line up with that really, really well. With that said, I don't think it hurts to sort of have some ducks in a row, maybe not all of them, because it's not as simple as just the application. There's some public hearings you need to do and process that way. But I think it might make sense to kind of have what we can have queued up in the event that that law were to go into place, or that we would be in a position to do this in a year. So I just wanted to talk about that publicly because I know it's something that's come up a bunch. It's something that's come up from some of our units a lot. I've gotten asked about it in the community. I've talked to a number of districts that got in ahead of time or got in pre-2016 and are still doing it. Black Duck and Lake Superior schools, for instance, are currently doing that and still doing that. And then a handful down south, but not that many in the state, less than 10 are doing it. That's unique to Minnesota. In some states, I think Colorado, it's over 40% of the districts are on 40 weeks. So I just wanted to share that with you, share that publicly. So if that doesn't get a lot of attention as we're working through the process, people know why it's not getting a lot of attention.
Be interesting to see studies in Colorado. 40%, that's clearly enough research.
Yeah.
You know, they've been doing it long enough to find out what the learning impacts are.
Yeah, I think what I've seen so far is that it's difficult to tease out the calendar as a variable in achievement. That's one thing that's challenging. The other thing is that I've seen is that it's really it's, what they have been able to do, they can't identify that there's a huge impact one way or the other. But there hasn't been like definitive good research that I've been able to find about it. But you're right, Colorado has enough kids on it.
Either they're hitting their markers in graduation or they're not. I mean, that's kind of,
Yeah.
this is kind of.
Yeah. The research challenge, of course, is it because of the 4-day week or not? You know, that's where it gets tricky.
Or in spite of.
Yeah, right, or in spite of.
Pat Maduri has his hand up.
Matt, in regards to the proposed draft number 2, how does this line up with IASC? Probably more importantly, how does it line up with NASWA, Keewatin School District? I mean, we're still looking to partner with them wherever we can in regards to academics and stuff.
Yeah, so thanks, Pat. Jumping into the calendar draft that's in front of you. The process that we went through is similar to what we've done previously, which is start at the IASC table with the calendar from the year before and come up with a draft there. There's usually a couple revisions as we kind of shake out the logistical and clerical kind of components of it. One of the things that's always tricky when we're putting together this calendar across the IASC is that the number of contract days is different. We have a couple school districts that are 180, 181 or a couple 181s, and then we have a 183. IASC has always set its calendar based on 183 for the employees that it has. And so we kind of start from there and have to adjust backwards from there. Our priority is always to prioritize aligning student days so that if we are running school or sharing students, that those days line up well. So this calendar, what you see here, is aligned with IASC. The only exception would be the districts that have fewer contract days than us, or the districts that have more, you need to either add days or take off. This calendar is not, it's tricky because of when September, or the first day of school is, in this case, September 3rd, you kind of are left with 180 days that we have. We're kind of left with a decision around January 2nd and 3rd, and then what happens at the end of the school year and what happens for some kind of a break. We also shared this at Meet and Confer with our local bargaining groups, and there's not a ton of, or that was with the teacher group, because we're required to do that in the contract. I don't have a lot of affinity for 2-day weeks. It's just not great. The problem with what we have in this, the way that the calendar just works with September 3rd is if we were to extend the break, the winter break through the 2nd and 3rd and add 2 days to the end, you can see what would happen. We'd have students coming back for 1 day in June on Monday, and then the last workshop day on the 30th. So that's probably worse. I guess it is worse between the two. We could add some more days. We could extend the break and then add some more days off in the calendar, but then that pushes into June. And, usually when people start talking about spring break, and then I say that's going to mean we have to go further into June, they say, oh, never mind. And so that's the push and the pull that happens with the calendar. And so graduation with this model would be Saturday at Big Fork and on Friday the 30th at Grand Rapids High School. We did go back, Julie and I went back and looked at the last time the calendar had the first day of school on September 3rd, and this is exactly what we did here. Some of the there may be some adjustments that we make because we'll be doing some English language arts training. So there may be some days in here that we have off due for some training, but if you think about this as the days that staff are working, this should be pretty close. And then this will come to you for approval at our next meeting, or wherever we may.
Any other discussion about the calendar?
Yeah, Matt, I think you said that this has been reviewed with teaching staff.
Yeah, we talked about it at our meet and confer with the teaching staff.
Thank you.
Pat, did you have your hand up?
Yes, question, Matt, in regards to the English, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the part of it, English training?
Yeah, so we have training that we're required to do between now and 2025 for the READ Act.
Okay.
Requires our teachers to go through, a certain type and a certain amount of training. Ryan and Jen, I know, have been working on that. And so that I'm not sure how other districts are going to do it. But one of the things in our state law regarding calendars, elementary students require less instructional hours or fewer instructional hours per year than high school students, according to the law. So the thinking at this point is that we would have some days in the calendar where elementary students would not report to school, so that training could occur.
So that was my question, Matt. So we're covering that piece for the new Reading Act in that. So
Yeah.
The other question I had is budget on the mind. With the calendar that's being proposed here, is there any cost savings on how this is being proposed to us? And if there isn't, is there anything we can do differently on this calendar that might equate out to a cost savings for us? And I realize we're bound by some contractual things and some statutory things as well, so.
Nothing comes to mind, Pat. Like I said, the 4-day week has some savings in it, because that affects some staff. The number of days that we're proposing here, the only thing that we could do is run right to the wire when it comes to instructional hours. Our calendar, our 171 student days, our 180 staff days has time built into the schedule or calendar above the state required minimums. And generally, in a typical winter, we use all that buffer. Last year I think we ended up having to make up a little time at the high school actually last year because we went over. So in a typical winter, we end up being pretty close to the wire on those hours. I don't know, Ryan.
I appreciate that, Matt. And again, just from a board perspective, we're looking at all angles on where we might be able to save some money. So I appreciate you taking that into consideration.
Do you want to talk any about the READ Act training, Ryan?
I would say there's a cost savings in having the training scheduled on a staff day. Then we're not paying folks this summer for professional development.
Yeah, that's true.
It's in a contract, baked into the contract.
That's true.
Were you able to hear that, Pat?
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Will this come before the board
Yep.
for approval at the next
Yep,
board meeting?
that's right.
Any other discussion? Any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, the workshop is adjourned.
Thank you, Mark.
Fastest one I had in a long time.
I know.
Thank you.
Those who are looking at the clock, once you how long.
Especially when it's so much that it is. No.
I was hoping to get one.
Oh, Pat had that.
I know.
He does it every time.
Otherwise, it would have been before.